This is the Pentax K-r. So you can pick this camera up for about $150 used. And this is a DSLR camera from Pentax that was released in 2010. So this camera has an APS-C size CMOS sensor with a 1.5 times crop factor. It shoots 12 megapixel RAW photos, so it's the lowest resolution camera on this list. But like I said earlier, 12 megapixels can still get you amazing looking photos. It is 100% enough resolution, especially when you're spending less than $200 on a DSLR camera. Now this camera can only record 720p video at 30 frames per second, so it's very limited when it comes to video recording. There's also not manual video recording, so it's going to automatically adjust all the settings for you, which is another kind of big limitation when it comes to recording video. So this is definitely a very limited video camera, but when it comes to photography, this takes great looking photos. So for the lens mount, you have the Pentax K-AF2 lens mount, which can use newer autofocus Pentax lenses as well as the older vintage manual focus Pentax lenses, which is awesome to see. On the back here, you have a 3-inch fixed LCD screen. It's not a touch screen and it's not articulating in any way, just fixed right in the back here. It's another pretty low resolution screen, but luckily there's an optical viewfinder on this camera as well. So when you take photos out in a bright sunny day, it'll be a lot easier than looking at that screen. This camera can shoot photos at a burst rate up to 6 photos per second, so the same as the Nikon D7000. It's pretty decent. You really wouldn't expect more in a less than $200 camera, honestly. You have an ISO range between 200 and 12,800 ISO. Now this camera does have built-in stabilization, which is great to see. It has stabilization for photos and videos. It can definitely give you better looking photos if you shoot handheld and with a long zoom lens. The built-in stabilization is a great feature to see at this price point. You also got a built-in flash up top. You have one SD card on the side here. And lastly, this camera is not weather sealed and it comes in at 598 grams. So this is a DSLR, but it's definitely smaller than the Nikon D7000 and a lot lighter. You can see my pinky kind of hangs off the bottom here. The grip isn't quite as good or bulky and deep as the D7000, but it actually is surprisingly good, and this camera feels really good in the hand. But in terms of buttons and dials and stuff like that, it's definitely pretty limited. But this was an entry-level camera when it was released, so it's kind of going to be more limited in that aspect versus the D7000 again, which was more of a mid to high-end camera. So a little limited on buttons and dials, but definitely enough to get you by. I really didn't have any issues when using this camera. Everything was really straightforward and taking pictures was a breeze with this camera. So some of the standout features of this, like I said, it was really straightforward and just simple to use. It has that built-in stabilization, which is awesome to see. And if you do have a lens with built-in stabilization as well, it'll pair with the lens to give you even better stabilization for your photos and videos. The photos out of this camera have great colors and they're really great quality. Even though it's the lowest resolution on this list, the photos out of this camera are fantastic still. And now here's something really cool. So on the bottom you have a typical rechargeable battery that all these other cameras have as well. But this is actually a dual slot to where you can put this typical rechargeable battery or you can put 4 AA batteries in there as well. So it's kind of cool if you don't have a charger with you, but you think you might need extra batteries like on a trip or something. You can obviously buy AA batteries pretty much anywhere or just bring some with you just to swap in there if your batteries die. I personally probably will never use AA batteries in this camera. I just think it's kind of cool to see that there's a double battery slot in here. We can do AA's or there's the typical rechargeable batteries. Now when it comes to cons with this camera, again, at this price point, this is a great camera. It has great colors, good ergonomics. It's really easy to use, but the video really just isn't that usable in this camera. I wouldn't recommend buying this camera for video. That's the only con I really have for this. Don't buy this camera if you want to record video with it. Honestly, any newer cell phone is going to have a lot better video quality than the Pentax K-r. But for 150 bucks, Pentax makes some awesome lenses. Like I said, you can get some vintage lenses for really good prices as well. And this is just a great Pentax camera for 150 bucks.